Number one, somebody with a hand and then tell me this answer. Yes.
Number one?
Yeah.
C squared equals A squared plus B squared minus 2AB cosine C.
I agree. What do we have to be a little careful about in terms of our punctuation, capitalization kind of stuff? The last C is capital letter. Don't mark that wrong over that today. But the law of cosines is C squared equals A squared plus B squared minus 2AB cosine, and then a big C. For the sake of the people who are new at this, what's the difference between the lowercase letter versus the upper letter? What's the difference in significance?
The upper ones are angles.
The uppercase are angles. Always after the trig words, we'll do angles. Always the angles are the uppercase letters. The lowercase letters are instead representing sides. Okay, the most important thing about this formula when you do it is in the picture, these two things need to go in the right slots at the opposite ends of the formula because in the picture they have a relationship. Anybody a thought or remembrance of what's the relationship in the picture of those? They're across from each other. They're opposite each other. So in this triangle, when we get here to the notes in a minute, which two items are opposite each other? 37 and X are forming the important pair because they're opposites in the picture. Somebody who's not in trig yet, which two items in this picture are opposites? Here, these matter because they're opposites in the picture. Which two things matter most on this?
X and 7.
The X and the 7 are opposites. Anybody in the room who are opposites here? 5 and X, there are opposites. Here, who are the opposites? 10 and 40. So in all the pictures that we see, you're going to want to look to spot some opposites. And if they go at opposite ends of the formula, you should be in good shape. Keeping in mind, this is always the angle, and this is a side. Why doesn't it matter if these kind of go in the wrong slots? True.
They're positive?
Okay.
They're both legs.
What's happening to these?
They're adding.
Adding. What's true about adding?
You can add either way.
You can add in any order. What's true, what are these doing? Multiplying. And you can multiply in any order. So you can't get these in the wrong slots in a sense. Even if you put A here and A there and you put something out of order, it works itself out because adding and multiplying are helpful. 2, a thought on 2. You can use it for any triangle. What was yesterday's lesson limited to? Right triangles only. Yesterday we had to have only right triangles. Today it's any triangles. There's no wrong triangles. Ha ha ha. So yesterday was only for right triangles. Today you can use it on any triangle in the world. 3, something like the study of triangles would work. Science of triangles, math of triangles, some sort of noun with triangles. We're all good there. 4, we go sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. 10, what's that answer? Use your calculator. 11's answer? Do the inverse. So 10, we're using our calculator. 11, we're doing an inverse. 12, let's talk through. Okay, we had, Abby chose that this was going to be the angle A. So this is our, everything done from this point of view. So what side is this? Hypotenuse, regardless. Because we chose this one, which one's the opposite? 24. Adjacent is then the 7. So when we go to do 12, what would sine's fraction be? 24 over 25. What's cosine's fraction? 7 over 25. What's tangent's fraction? 24/7. 15, we would need our calculator and kind of math it out. It's going to be a 5.16 and a 7.37. If they did some kind of funny rounding and had 5.15 instead of 5.16, just leave that if they're only off by a 0.01. But if they're off by more than a 0.01, that's a no-go. But 5.16, 7.37. We'll cut that for a minute. Okay, so let's do math seminar first on the problem at the end, the 1516, and we'll do what's next on the quiz. So for 1516, draw a triangle. Where's the 9? Hypotenuse. Then I could put the 55 in any corner. It doesn't matter where I put the 55, just pick one, top or bottom. Bottom. Since you picked the bottom, is this O, A, or H? That is O, because those are opposites. This is A, and that was undoubtedly going to be the hypotenuse no matter what we did. If we go to seek this one, if we're using the O and the H, which trig word is that? That is sine. The angle for that? 55 equals what fraction for that? O over 9. How would you solve that for the O? Move the 9 to do what? Multiply. Punch in 9 sine 55, and we'd be good on that one. If I want to go get the A, I could put the A over the 9. Which word is that? Cosine. Still 55, and the 9 likewise just needs to go up. That's how we could produce those two answers on 1516. Anybody confusion on that? Okay, reconsideration from yesterday. I checked my notes and memories and looked around. What we're doing for this chapter is a non-program chapter. When we're beyond this chapter, we'll return on all of your programs, okay? But in the interest of fairness and practice, I always turn programs off while we're in this chapter because the calc people, trig people, already have an advantage over the other people to begin with in math, because you've had more math. You're already at an advantage. If we create a further advantage of not even making you do the math, but just let the machine do your math, so like the poor kids that don't have the programs are spending 45 minutes doing the sheet and you're just pushing buttons and they actually know what they're doing and you maybe don't actually know what you're doing. That doesn't make any sense. So we turn the programs off for this chapter while it's trig focused only. And then by the time we get back into the business of chapter 5, we're going to look to turn programs on for not just you people, but I need to feed them a little bit of programs too. So that the people that are in the general maths and stuff, that they have some sense of equality. They haven't earned the programs in the sense that you did by writing some of them yourself, but I still think in the interest of fairness, they need to like have some programs too to just keep their heads above water, okay? Because when we get back to the physics problems involving the math within physics, we need to even that out. So just to clarify, last night, however you did it, you did it. Last night's water under the bridge, that's on me. So if you used your programs last night, you used your programs last night. I'm not going to make you do that again. But from here forward, our programs other than quadratic are off. Quadratic is on. We'll need it every once in a while. Quadratic, 2 thumbs up. People that don't have a quadratic program, because you're not in those classes, I'll need to borrow your calculator and zap it in there with my cable sometime. So sometime today, visit me and my cable and I'll zap you a quadratic program into your machine that will help you along in your life. But beyond this chapter, we'll activate all our programs again, but we're going to practice our pencil and paper. So Advantage actually tips to calc or trig this week.
Trig.
Probably to trig. So I'd say Advantage trig because you're probably fresher on doing this math than the calc people. There's some fade. There's been some fade on it. Okay, so next quiz up, there is a 1.8 to read. There is one new point. People that have been through trigger calc, you know what's coming next. If we did law of cosines today, you know what's coming. Oh, giving away the secrets. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert back there. So one new point from reading, and then compared to today's, 1, 2, 3, all the same, 4 to 9, same, 10, 11, same. The only thing I could see me do in 10, 11, maybe flop that order just to see if I can get you. I'd be on the lookout for that day by day, or at least on the test. 12 to 14, same, but we'll draw a new picture. Like I'll just call on one of you and randomly have you make some choices, and I'll build a triangle around whatever choice you make for me. 15, 16 will be same style, but I'll change the numbers, so don't memorize like 5.16, 5.16, 5.16. It'll be some other number. Livia, when you show up, it won't be 5.16. I'll change your number, so don't memorize 5.16 on yours either, because that won't work out for you. 2 new points are going to appear while we do the notes. When I get far over to the right, we'll have 2 new points of notes appear on the far right. And then there will be 3 other new mathy style questions. One like this one that we're going to do first. One like this one that we're going to do second. And one like one of those 2 that we'll do at the end. So that's the 1-8 quiz. The homework will be a worksheet again, so I have another homemade worksheet that we'll look to do. This will have a mix of yesterday repractice, because for some of the general math people, they never saw this before. So I'm going to give a little bit of repractice more to make sure we seal that in on them. And then there's also some new things like this on this paper as well. So here we go. We focused a minute ago on this, doing law of cosines, that the x and the 37 were our opposites. Anybody in the room, does x go here or 37 go here? X goes there. So we're going to go x squared equals. At the very end, I'm going to do cosine 37. And then through the middle, we have a little bit of wiggle room as to who goes where. But it has to be x squared at the beginning. It has to be 37 at the end. Here,
4.
we could go 4 from 2 squared. And then this is forced to be 9 from 3 squared. And if those were out of order, doesn't matter. This always has a 2. And then in this case, our other numbers are
6.
2 and 3, or 6, however you want to do that. Anybody not understand how those got slotted, especially people in general math, but additionally people who are brushing up after not doing this for a year? Anything confusing about that? This is the best way we can have our x need to be solved, because we always want to get the variable so it's alone. It's already pretty lonely. The only thing we have to worry about in oppositeville here is rooting. To get rid of a square, we do a root. And your calculator can punch that in one big giant calculation. Just hit the root button. If you've not used these machines much, the root button is involving yellow somehow. It's the yellow button, and then it shares with the x squared key probably.
Yeah.
So it's yellow and then the x squared key to get this going. And then just punch in 4 plus 9 minus 2 times 2 times 3 times cosine 37. You hit enter. And what I'm hoping for is a 1.85. If you did not get 1.85, we probably need to check your mode, especially if you didn't play any calculator games with me yesterday. We need to check a mode on that. Did yours turn up?
Yeah.
Okay. Is your mode okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you punch yet on yours by chance? Did it get that? Okay, we're good. Anybody bothered by that? So here we're getting an angle. So let's utilize a quiz answer. If you're getting an angle, you have to do an inverse. So at some point in this process, we're going to have to do an inverse, which means what on the machine? The second button. The yellow button will come into play on this one to do an inverse. But let's set up the big formula first. So with 7 and x, this one's going to be the 49. Because we always do the side at the beginning, and we save the angle for the end. Okay, so with 7 and x, the opposites in the picture, 7 and x go to opposite ends of the formula.
25.
25 is a choice, so is 36. And if those are out of order, doesn't matter. Always a 2, 5 and 6. Question about that. A lot more work to get this x alone, because there's a crowd on that side. So always do a little cleanup first. By cleanup, I mean put this together, 61, multiply those together, 60. And then fight off the temptation to do 61 minus 60. That can't work. The 60's multiplying this. These are unlike terms. You cannot put these two things together. You just have to start to do your opposites. Who's got to get out first?
61.
How do you get rid of 61?
Subtract.
Subtract 61. So we're looking at
-12.
-12. Then
Divide.
divide by
12. 60.
-60. If you want to save yourself a little bother, a negative dividing a negative is a positive, so you don't have to type in those negatives. And then everything in math has an opposite. The opposite of cosine is inverse cosine. So we're going to punch in on our calculator, inverse cosine, 12 over 60, punch it, a punch it, a punch, punch, punch. I'm showing 78.46. Question about that?
If you were to simplify like the 12 over 60.
That's fine. But since you're gonna end up having to go to the calculator anyway, not a great advantage in that, but it doesn't hurt. Like if you quick eyeball that, and you're like, ah, that's a fifth. No harm. Anybody there?
So when we're doing homework, you want us to go 2 places?
Yeah, go 2 decimal places on all these. Yeah, for significant figures have gone on hold still for this chapter. We're just gonna go 2 decimal places. This is the same style question, different result. Trig people, you should already know what's coming. Calculus people, you might know what's coming. Other people, you're going to be surprised when it comes, and then we'll remind you of a geometry fact. So, who's going first?
25.
25. The 5 squared will go first, and then at the end, there's a cosine x.
100.
100 could go there.
9.
So could 9. Those are interchangeable. 2.
10 and 3.
10 and 3, 10 and 3, interchangeable. Then I'd say clean up. 109, 60. Can we get a 49 by doing that math? No.
Subtract the 109.
Subtract the 109, shows up
-84.
-84,
Divide the 60.
warmish.
-60.
Divide by -60, again, 2 negatives, make a positive. That doesn't have to happen every time. That's 50-50. Just because we went 2 for 2 on that doesn't mean that'll always occur at half the time. And then to get rid of cosine,
Inverse cosine.
inverse cosine. If you do this on your calculator, you will get a math error, and that is what should happen. You should get a math error. And you can recognize this in one of like 2 locations. What was cosine this week when we created it in some people's minds for the first time?
A over H.
A over H. Why is this a crazy thing to have an A that's 84 and an H that's 60? Hypotenuse has to be the biggest, so that's nutso. So if you notice that there and don't even push the buttons, that's fine. There's another earlier spot way back at the beginning that we could realize here we're counteracting another geometry fact. Anybody?
The sides of that triangle and added to be bigger than the third one.
2 sides added have to be bigger than the third. So 3 plus 5 is only 8. There's no way you could have a triangle with 3, 5, and 10. And if you see that coming, as soon as you see it, say no answer and don't even do the math. But if you do the math by accident and get a math error, that's probably what happened to you. My best explanation of this is, imagine you had 10 feet of a big hole in the ground you had to get across 10 feet. And your friend on one side had a 3-foot piece of wood, and your friend on the other side had a 5-foot piece of wood, and you try to lean these together to make a bridge. What's going to happen to those pieces of wood? They're going to fall in the hole. You don't have enough wood. But if you had like a 7 and a 5, could you lean in the 7 and the 5 to build a little triangle bridge? You sure could, because that can cover up to 12 feet of action. You lean those in, you fasten it down, you got yourself a bridge. Any two sides added have to beat the third side. A question about that. Save the worst for last. So if we go to do this one,
100,
100 at the beginning,
cosine 40,
cosine 40 at the end. And through the middle, it's sort of interchangeable.
25,
25 is a choice.
x squared,
X squared is a choice.
minus 5 and x.
Cosine 40. Step to the left, algebra flashback. We have an equation of this style right now. How have we solved equations of this style in our past?
That's equal 0.
Get it equals 0,
Minus 6.
and then we try to
Factor.
X, minus, plus.
signs same or different?
Different.
Different. If this is a minus, we're different.
3 with the plus.
Disagree? 6 and 1, because when they're different, we have to subtract to the middle. So 6 and 1, with 6 going with the plus. This will take the bigger number, 6. That's a 1. So this answer, 1. This answer,
Negative 6.
6. We've done that before. That was algebra 1. We did that. Algebra 2, we did that some more. And in algebra 2, I took you up a notch and said, what if that's a 7? Can't factor.
Can't.
So what did we do?
No answer.
That is the answer.
Somebody who's a non-trig person, because they just had this conversation a week ago.
Oh,
Oh, that's us.
let's see.
Any person not in trig right now, how can you solve that thing?
No answer.
Like what letter does it start with?
Oh, there's an answer.
What does it start with? Can we get a letter?
It starts with a Q.
Quadratic.
Quadratic
Oh,
equation.
Yeah. I was looking at that.
There's a thing called the quadratic formula, and here's our 2 points worth of notes I said would make the next quiz. It's how do you solve equations like this? And you would say the quadratic formula. And then somebody who's not in trig, can you tell me the letters and such for the quadratic formula?
So A is 7.
Yeah, well, if we went to label them up there, there is an A, there is a B, there is a C, which is which?
A is the x squared.
So that's
1,
1,
5,
B is 5,
negative 7.
C is negative 7. That's how we pick them. But then what's the formula look like?
Oh, is that like a negative something? It's like a
Negative B.
negative
It's all over two.
Equals
It is all over 2A.
plus minus a root of
2, Two.
Is it
right?
A,
2AB.
C, B, B
A half.
plus C?
No, I think that is right. It's a half.
It's A plus C, right?
And then it's A squared.
B squared.
Good job. Close enough.
So that's another point tomorrow. We'll need to practice that a little bit. So, people that were in Algebra 2 before the coronavirus hit, that's like where we were. Like that's where we left off Algebra 2 last year. We were in a chapter where we were getting ready to take a test on the quadratic formula, and quarantine shut it down. And my original thought was, we'll just take the test when we get back to school. And then we never came back to school. And at some point I thought, this isn't even fair to try to take this test after it became clear like 2 months in, we weren't coming back. I wasn't gonna try to rewind 2 months worth of time. But this is where we were in Algebra 2 when we went on to the lockdown. But that'll appear tomorrow. So if we take a stroll over here, to make this equation quadratic formula-able, if that's a word, if it isn't, I just made it up my own word today. What would we have to do first?
subtract the 25 and the 100.
Make it 0.
Make it 0. So get rid of the 100 by
Subtracting it.
subtracting it, and we get a negative 75, and all that same other stuff. people that don't have the program, again, visit me, I'll get the cable, we'll zap this in there, okay? But we have a program that'll pop up, people that have it, pop it up, get your quadratic program, pop. It'll say, what is A? And you would say 1. The A in physics, this chapter, will always be a 1. The x squared will always have a 1 with it, so A of 1. Then it'll say, who's B?
Negative 10,
Warm,
positive
colder,
Negative 10x.
Negative
Equally
10 cosine 40.
correct.
10. Oh.
We want to take everything that surrounds the x. The x is our marker to find the b. The b would be negative 10 cosine 40, punch that whole thing. Then it'll ask you what's c,
Negative 75.
negative 75, you let it rip, and there's different things that could happen. You could get 2 answers, you could get 1 answer, you can get no answer. Those are all available alternatives of what could happen. In the setting we just ran, you should have a 13.299.
Yes.
That is an answer. I want that one. I went 3 decimal places on that because I felt bad rounding that up to have a 0 and getting into that world. But then why is the other answer useless?
It's negative.
It's negative. Can you have a triangle that has a negative side? No, that's crazy. So if it gives you 1 positive and 1 negative, throw away any negative answers you get. What if it gave you 2 negative answers?
Throw them both away.
Throw them both away. It's also possible, it might just give you a message. That program has the ability sometimes to just give you a message. This can't be. You might get that message. Like, here's a triangle. This just can't be. If 5 is across from 140,
10 has to be bigger.
10 has to be across from something that's bigger than that. But the whole triangle can only make 180, like that's nuts. Okay, so there are some things in those that are nuts. I need to give you the worksheet and then we'll head for the hills. Tomorrow we'll try to get into the both homework sheets a little bit. So if you're behind on the 1-6,
Learning to me.
no harm done.